Xbox On. Welcome to Xbox On, a podcast with one host about one console, Xbox. I'm said host Jesse DeRosa, and on today's episode, we'll be talking about the latest Xbox news for the week of March 28, 2024, including, in a new interview with Polygon, Phil Spencer talks about what's going on in the games industry, the possibility of an Xbox handheld, and more, all while publishers wonder in the background if Xbox as a platform is one worthy of supporting as console sales flatline. All this and more. On this day in Xbox history, in the year 2005, 19 years ago, Tom Clancy's Splinter Cell Chaos Theory was released in the US and Canada for Xbox. This is Splinter Cell I almost said Tom Cell. Splinter Cell in general is a blind spot for me in my gaming catalog. You might recall, if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, last year around this time actually, I tried to rectify that by playing the first Splinter Cell game. It was gifted to me for my birthday. I started playing through the first one, and I was really enjoying it, and then just fell off, didn't come back to it, and that's the extent of my experience with Splinter Cell. I know people freaking love these games, especially some of the later ones. I know old Xbox fans really love the original ones, and then I feel like mainstream audiences really liked the latter ones in the 360 era that were more action-oriented, but personally, I'm not familiar enough with the franchise to really have much of an opinion on it, but I did like what I played of the first one. Cool game. It was weird playing a game like that and being like, wow, I remember when games were like this and when Ubisoft did more than just Far Cry spinoffs. But anyway, shout out to Tom Clancy's Splinter Cell Chaos Theory. That's the third one, right? Yeah, the first one is Splinter Cell, then it's Pandora Tomorrow, or is it Chaos Theory then Pandora Tomorrow? I'm actually not sure. Maybe Chaos Theory is the second one, then I think Pandora Tomorrow is the second, then Chaos Theory is the third, if I'm not mistaken. I can actually tell by the cover because Pandora Tomorrow has orange and Chaos Theory is green. That's right. If you're a kid, if you're a product of a Blockbuster employee, you will know a lot about video games just from perusing the aisles of a Blockbuster store and seeing the game art on the wall constantly all the fucking time as you travel around with your dad for work. Anyway, guys, welcome to Xbox On, episode 252 of the world's blank Xbox podcast. I don't know what title this show holds. You know, there's an Xbox podcast out there that is the most popular Xbox podcast. There's one that's the highest rated Xbox podcast. There's the one that is the longest running Xbox podcast. Xbox On is none of those things, and so I don't know where we fit in. Help me out with this, maybe if you feel obligated to do so, if you feel compelled to do so. What is Xbox On? It is the world's podcast. Maybe it's the only Xbox podcast hosted by a Georgia expat living in Florida, alone in his underwear on Wednesday nights. That's it. If that's your criteria for an Xbox podcast, you're not going to find that shit anywhere else but right here. So I'm glad you're here. Welcome. Take a seat. Why don't you chug yourself a Molson or a Labatt's Blue or a classic Canadian lager, and we'll get into this week's Xbox information, starting with notable game releases of the week. So really only two worth mentioning here. The first one being South Park Snow Day, which is available on Xbox Series consoles as well as PC. As of the time you're listening to this, it's out now. Game's kind of reviewing poorly, which isn't surprising. This game never looked interesting to me at all. I'm still not entirely sure what it is. I know it's some kind of multiplayer thing. The art style / more 3D animation style thing they're going for here looks just, I don't know. It's like everything they got right with those South Park RPG games a few years back. I feel like this game is the antithesis of that and just so unappealing. But maybe it's a great game. I don't know. I'm going to continue to stay ignorant on this game because I just have, as someone who enjoys the South Park TV show a lot, I just have so little interest in this game. The other game that comes out this week, which I am very enthusiastic about, is Open Roads, which is a day one Game Pass game, also out as of the time you listen to this podcast. Comes out today, Thursday, and it is available on Xbox Series, Xbox One, and PC. And this game is the latest game from the team that made Tacoma and Gone Home and those games, and it is another one of those kinds of adventure, story-driven kind of experiences. There's not necessarily like a combat mechanic or gameplay loop in that sense, in that traditional sense, but it's more narrative focused. Probably only like a 3-hour game, if this game is anything like all the other games in the genre. But I love these kinds of games. They're always great little weekend experiences. They are the perfect, it's the perfect place where these games are like the meeting grounds of like the interactive fun of a video game with the compelling and emotional storytelling of like a good movie. And I just really love taking the best storytelling that comes from video games with interactivity, with more narrative driven drama related stuff, as opposed to just like boom, boom, shoot, shoot, that these games are known for. So I'm pretty interested in this game. I think it's about like a mother and her daughter on a road trip together, and then all the drama that ensues as a result of that. But yeah, needless to say, especially with Game Pass, this is a great game. Or this is a great get for Game Pass, and something I'm certainly looking forward to checking out just as soon as I clean up what I'm played a little bit. But that's really it for notable game releases this week. There are some other things, but I don't really want to mention anything other than that. Guys, let's open this week's podcast. We got a lot of Phil Spencer stuff to talk about. So let's open this week's podcast with some non-Phil Spencer related topics, some third-party games, things like that, and then we'll jump into all the Polygon interviews with Phil Spencer and the comments about that embarrassing photo he took that was taken of him at a Christmas party, and how that photo circulating around today still compels him to do all these interviews that most executives would otherwise decline. But we're going to start off our mildly amusing stories with one from none other than Video Games Chronicle. Honestly, we could have pulled this from anyone. It's just their relaying of it. IGN did this. A lot of major YouTubers did this. But Judas, the upcoming game from Ken Levine, the father of BioShock, his new upcoming game from his new team, Ghost Story Games, has been in the news this week because Ghost Story Games invited some notable media outlets and video game YouTubers to come out. Where are they? I think they're somewhere northeast. They're not Massachusetts, are they? I don't know where they are. It doesn't really fucking matter where they are. They're probably one of those places where they got like fucking a Liberty Bell or some fucking kind of weird accent that makes me cringe every time I hear it. I don't know. But they're out there, and they invited a bunch of media and game YouTubers to come and play the first 5 hours. Or actually, I don't know if it's the first 5 hours or if it's just a specifically curated part, a 5-hour portion of the game. But they got to experience the game in its kind of alpha phase, and do Q&As and interviews with none other than Ken Levine, the father of the BioShock series and of Judas. And I don't really want to get into much of the interviews and people's reactions to playing the game because, honestly, I feel like, if that's something you want to go spoil for yourself or experience for yourself and dive nerdy and deep into it, the world is your oyster. You got access to the internet, you can go find that stuff. But I do just want to point out that it seems like the reoccurring takeaway from what IGN said, from what Scale Up said, from what Jeff Keighley said, was that overwhelmingly people feel like, hey, if you liked BioShock, it seems like Ken Levine is making a new BioShock game in everything but name. And if you're me, and I do love BioShock, and I am me, this sounds fucking great because Judas looks like a very BioShock-inspired game. I wish we had more BioShock, and I'm very much open to the idea of a new game that is pretty much just a spiritual successor. So I'm all over this. I'm very excited about this. This game looks great. The 2 times we've seen it at the Game Awards in recent years, I've been very hyped for it. And now, no one's coming out saying, oh, this game's great. It's in that kind of a pre-build alpha stage. You don't really want to give a verdict on a game in that state. But it's it seems pretty safe to assume that this is going to be a game you're going to want to familiarize yourself with in some way if you are a fan of the BioShock games. And yeah, so I'm into it. First person narrative driven shooter. Let's go. So just want to put that out. If you're also excited for Judas as I am, this is probably something you want to look into a little further. Maybe watch a YouTube video or read an article where they interviewed Ken Levine. Why not? All right, next thing I want to talk about is a little bit of controversy. This is the stuff that gets people engaged, right? We get to talk about a little dissatisfaction circulating in the industry. So Dragon's Dogma 2 came out last week. We didn't really talk about it too much because it was coming out right around the time I was recording the podcast. But right after all that, lots of drama started to spin up because It's not acceptable for a game to just release and exist. So we got to have drama, because a lot of people are pissed off about this game. So let me just read a little summation of what all is going on from VGC. Dragon's Dogma 2 is released to mixed reviews on Steam, with numerous players expressing unhappiness with the game's microtransactions. Players discovered that there are 21 separate DLC purchases available from day one, and are disappointed. The disappointment appears to be aimed at the fact that some of these are for features or actions that players feel should be obtainable in the game for free. One of the DLC purchases being cited and criticized is called Art of Metamorphosis, which lets players alter their character's appearance and change hairstyles like a character creator feature. But contrary to the claim that this game is, that character customization stuff is locked behind a paywall, this skill can actually be found in the game. You don't have to buy it. It's just extremely rare to find in the game, meaning that, players are being kind of urged and pushed and nudged to spend $1.99 to obtain these via microtransactions, so you can go into your character customization. Full stop. Just side note. Full stop. That's dog shit. Listen, I'm going to try to appreciate the multiple perspectives that come along with how people feel about this game, but we can all agree unanimously that changing your character's appearance, character customization shit, making that a free to do but difficult to do thing without spending a trivial amount of money, $1-2, that's a bad consumer move. That's a fuck you move, right? I mean, that's just that there's no getting around that. I don't care if it's you could absolutely do this for free. We're just going to make it slightly less irritating. We're going to remove the quality of life element of it and put it behind a paywall. Fuck you. Other items being sold include wake stones, which can be used to resurrect players during long battles instead of returning to a checkpoint to resurrect a dead NPC. So again, it's not that you cannot resurrect a dead NPC, it's just rather than going back to a previous checkpoint, you could use a wake stone to resurrect them in the middle of a battle. Now this can also be done for free in the game, or the problem is finding these wake stones is, they're rare, they're not super common in the game. But players can buy up a pack of 5 of these wake stones for $1 each. So real world money to just circumvent something that is in the game, but is just made intentionally a little inconvenient just to kind of nudge you to spend $1 or $2 here or there. So again, fuck you. Now, here's the thing I can't speak to, right? Because I'm not playing Dragon's Dogma 2. I have negative 74% interest in playing Dragon's Dogma 2, and there's a better chance I will become a fucking swinger / bare naked ladies fanboy before I play Dragon's Dogma 2, because I just care so little. But that being said, and that has nothing to do with the controversy around the game, that's just my personal taste. But that being said, I can't fully speak to how dog shit this is, because I don't know just how easy or not easy or rare these stones really are. It could be one of those things where one person says it's super rare to come across a wake stone, so it's bullshit that they charge you $1 to buy more, when it's they're intentionally making it hard to find. But then one player probably says, no, these things aren't hard to find, you stupid idiot. If you're paying attention to the game, they make it very clear, very easy how to easily obtain a ton of these. In fact, there's even a place you can go to cheese this feature and acquire 8 trillion wake stones so that you never have to think about. I get it. I get all those perspectives, and I understand that I can only speak to this from a limited point of view because I don't play this game. I haven't played this game. I'm not going to play this game, so I don't really know what it feels like to be in this situation. But I don't need to do all that to tell you, just on paper, this is shit. And even if players who are enjoying the game a great deal say, hey, listen, I'm playing the game right now, I'm 30 hours in, this hasn't hindered my experience at all. I don't feel like I am getting less of an experience, or that I'm constantly being nudged and suggested to spend $1 here or there by this game. That's what you guys are saying it is, but that's not what it feels like playing the game. Regardless of that, and that's great for you, regardless of that, this is a slippery slope. Games that allow this kind of shit to exist, it's a slippery slope. Because let's say we can all agree it's a shitty thing, but the game does a good job of making it not that much of an inconvenience. Okay, that's great. But then if we allow this kind of thing to happen in a game like Dragon's Dogma 2, next up, EA or Activision or one of these motherfuckers try it in one of their games, a very similar type of microtransaction approach, and maybe they're not as nice about it. Maybe they don't do as good of a job as Capcom has with Dragon's Dogma. So that's really the long and short of it. It's pretty simple. It's even if the way the game actually handles it doesn't feel bad at all once you're playing the game, you should still be against this and super vocal about telling Capcom, don't ever fucking do this again, because it's a slippery slope. If we let it slide this time, we just open the floodgate to let other unsavory shitheads do the same thing, but maybe a little worse and a little worse. And before you know it, we got YouTube retrospectives about the good old days when microtransactions were just for pay-to-win weapons in multiplayer games, and then it infected the single-player space. So, again, I think the best thing to do is just to have a wide sweep, unilateral, fuck you approach to all publishers who try this bullshit, and just make it abundantly clear we don't want this stuff encroaching in the single-player space whatsoever, and just be done with it. I understand games are expensive to make, and we got to figure out a better way to make gaming better for developers and publishers, to where they're able to make healthier profits, and we can keep costs of games down and make the art form more sustainable. But this is not it, okay? I get it. The cost of eggs went up because of farmers or whatever the fuck is the excuse from COVID. Listen, the answer isn't to fucking, I don't know what I'm trying to say. Isn't to make you pay twice for eggs. It's to make you buy the chicken so it lays eggs for free. I don't know what I'm saying. Let me just move on, because nothing to say here. Dragon's Dogma 2. All right, last one here we got to touch on at the top of the show. A good little update here on Toys for Bob, the Skylanders / COD support team that recently spun off from Activision following Microsoft's acquiring of the publisher. So we got an update from Windows Central, and this is VGC's little write-up of it, but Windows Central gets the credit for the reporting here, where they got a little bit of an update on Toys for Bob, and it looks like they've reached an agreement with Microsoft regarding their next game, because as you recall, Toys for Bob, even though they're spinning off from Activision, going independent, they're signing an agreement with Microsoft where they're going to work with them for their next game, couple of games. So they're going to work on making games that are going to be for the Xbox platform, but they're not going to be owned by Xbox, and likely their IP will not be owned by Xbox. Any new IP they come up with, that is. So the studio announced last month it was leaving Activision Blizzard to become independent. In a statement last month, the studio head Polygon and Avery Lodato said that despite the decision to go independent, they're exploring the possibility of a partnership with Microsoft. Now it appears that they've finalized, according to Windows Central, that partnership, which claims that Microsoft and Toys for Bob have reached an agreement on the next game from the studio. According to the report, which cites sources familiar with the recent Xbox Town Hall meeting held for staff, Xbox Game Studios head Matt Booty was asked what's happening with Toys for Bob, to which he responded. Booty said about Bob, he said he had been reached with Toys for Bob for its first game as an independent studio, and while he didn't confirm what the game would be, he did say it would be similar to games that Toys for Bob has made in the past. So, Toys for Bob has made a Crash Team Racing remake. They've made Warzone skins for Call of Duty. They've made Spyro and Crash Bandicoot remakes and a sequel to Crash Bandicoot with Crash 4, It's About Time. They invented the Toys for Life genre with the Skylanders series. So while I do think if someone says Toys for Bob and you know who they are, you have a pretty good idea of what kind of games they make. Technically, they don't really have a style of game they're known for making, because they just remake games and then do support work for the most part. But that being said, most of the games they do support work on, or most of the games they've done remakes of, or remasters of, or whatever, have been within a similar echelon, a similar vein of other things they've done, as well as their original IP. So it is safe to say that they are doing something that is cartoony, something that is comic mischief, something that is in the E10 realm of things. So, hey, maybe they're going to license Crash or Spyro as an IP from Activision and Microsoft and make a new Crash Bandicoot or Spyro the Dragon game. That would be fucking awesome. I'm all for that. I think that'd be really cool if we could get like a brand new Spyro game, not a racing game, not a party game, not a multiplayer game, not a remake or a remaster or a reimagining or a port, but like a brand new from the ground up Spyro game. That would be pretty fucking badass. I know there's a lot of people who are like, ooh, now they have access to Banjo-Kazooie and Conker's Bad Fur Day. Do another one of those. Maybe. If you're working with Microsoft, yeah, maybe. I think these guys could be tapped to do something cool with Banjo-Kazooie. I don't think they should try to make the exact style of Banjo-Kazooie game that Rare made back in the day, because I really don't think Banjo-Kazooie and Spyro the Dragon are like the same thing, even though they're both character 3D mascot platformers. They're both very different. It's in the same way. It's like I don't necessarily want the Call of Duty guys to make Halo and the Halo guys to make Call of Duty, because they're different. It's not to say that one couldn't make, not to say that Treyarch couldn't make a good Halo game. I mean, I'd be open to that, but I don't necessarily think Treyarch should make the next main entry in the Halo franchise. So it's kind of a similar thing where I'm like, I don't know. If you're still living out your childhood fantasy of wanting a Banjo-Kazooie 3, a proper Banjo-Kazooie 3, or a proper sequel to Conker's Bad Fur Day, I say, don't hold your fucking breath. I don't think these guys are necessarily the ones to do it just because they make good Spyro games. I don't really think those things necessarily correlate. But do I think Toys for Bob could probably make a fun game using the Banjo-Kazooie IP, using the Conker IP? Yeah, probably. I really don't want them to do Conker in particular. That's one I very specifically don't want them to do. I don't, Conker is fun. Conker's cute. I like the Deadpool nature of it. Like it looks G, but it talks R kind of thing. The little slant it has. That's fun, and I like that game for what it is. But that's not Toys for Bob, and I'd rather them not go in that direction. I think one thing that you'll never see pretty much anyone but me for some reason fight for in the gaming space. It's just, I think there's still a need, or at least maybe it's just me trying to live out my childhood fantasies and remain a child at heart. I still think there's a need and a desire and a market for games that are definitely for kids, aimed at kids. I think the E10 rating doesn't need to disappear. I understand that kids grow up like way too fast nowadays, and by the time you're 6 years old, if you haven't fucking watched Brokeback Mountain 4 times and beaten every Call of Duty with hanging sequences, that you're like not a man or something. I don't even know what I'm saying, but you know what I mean? Like, I don't know, man. I had a lot of fun growing up playing games like Spyro the Dragon and Mario and Spider-Man games and stuff like that. And I just feel like kids today, it's like everything is just so serious or so mature that if you're not playing on the Nintendo platform, you basically just don't get games as a kid, unless you're one of those kids who wants to grow up way too fast. And trust me, I'm sure the overwhelming majority of kids today probably just want to play Grand Theft Auto 6. But for those like me who were too afraid to ride a goddamn roller coaster until you had chest hair, I just want to let you know, I still think you deserve some kid games. So Toys for Bob, go ahead. Make Spyro, make Crash. I'm all for a completely brand new IP. I think that'd be way more badass to do a brand new, from the ground up original IP. I think, dude, if we could get a new 3D character mascot platform type game in the year 2020, whatever this game comes out, I don't know, man. That'd be so cool. I know we got Super Lucky's Tale a few years ago. That game was actually pretty decent. And I know there are some indie games like A Hat in Time and stuff, but I don't know. I don't even know what I'm saying. I like Toys for Bob. I wish them the best. Whatever it is they decide to work on, I'm excited to see it. I'm excited to get my hands on it. But yeah, just remember how fucking good. You guys remember how awesome games were? And like, I miss the PS2, Xbox, GameCube generation. I miss that generation. And that was still when like licensed games were kind of for kids too. So like, even if a game was rated T, like, Spider-Man 2, the video game, or like X-Men, what was that game called? X-Men Legends? X-Men Apocalypse? Like those games, it's like they were rated T, but they were still like pretty kiddie, And then there's like really kiddie stuff. Like everything was, every third party team wanted to make like a 3D platformer. What do kids play these days? I want to maybe I should, interview some 7-year-olds and see what kind of games they like to play. I like to play, I mean, it's Fortnite, right? Like that's what they have. If they want to play a real game that's for all ages, it's Mario. And then anything else is Fortnite and Grand Theft Auto. I'm sure that's what these fucking kids play. It's Fortnite, Grand Theft Auto, Rocket League, Roblox, Minecraft. And then they're probably watching porn by the time they're 9 years old. What's wrong with this porn epidemic? These kids are playing Call of Duty and Grand Theft Auto and jerking it before they even hit puberty. What's going on here? Okay, we need to do something about these kids. This is why I think we should bring back what's that? Probably need to just cut this whole fucking thing out. I'm going to get a lot worse than canceled for having this conversation. Let's just end this right now. Toys for Bob, I wouldn't say no to another Skylanders. All right, that's it for all the small, mildly amusing, but absurdly offensive opening news stories. Let's just move far away from that topic and we'll talk about the games I've been playing this week. But before I can talk about the games I've been playing this week, before we get into the main news of the week, I want to just talk real quick about what it is I've been eating. You guys, I don't mean to sound like deja vu over here with my repeat of last week's what I'm eating and what I'm playing, but last week we talked about the new Taco Bell Cantina menu. I told you at the time they had only launched the crispy chicken taco and the chicken quesadilla. That was the only things they had put out so far. Well, this week the full Cantina menu's out, which means I had the opportunity to try the new Taco Bell Cantina burrito. Saturday night was a weird one. I don't know what happened. We got fucking free tickets from T-Mobile to go see the new Ghostbusters. I haven't even seen like the last 7 Ghostbusters movies, so no context for what's happening. We go see Ghostbusters. I don't know. It happened. But the good news is, and the reason why Ghostbusters is relevant in this scenario, is because Ghostbusters, the movie, is right next door to Taco Bell, the restaurant where I live. So in that area, we got Taco Bell right next to Ghostbusters. So after Ghostbusters, I say, I'm kind of hungry. I haven't eaten since like 12 o'clock today, and now it's really late at night. Probably shouldn't eat so late at night, but I'm fat, so let's go eat anyway. And Taco Bell was right there across the street, and I said, I know of a menu item I haven't had my grubby little hands on yet, and it's the Cantina Burrito, which I just launched, and so we ordered it. And much like last week, I gotta say, when it comes to the Cantina menu, it's Taco Bell trying to be like one step above, higher quality ingredients. They got some red cabbage in that lettuce mix. They're not using just diced tomatoes. It's pico de gallo. So for gringos, that means cilantro and onions with your tomatoes. It's just like, it's crazy. It's wacky. Taco Bell is just trying to be a little more like contemporary, fresh Mexican food, I guess. And with the burrito, I will say it's not as good as the quesadilla, but it is still damn good. That red cabbage in there, that creamy chipotle sauce, everything, it's some good shit. Again, is this something I'm going to come back for every time? No. But that quesadilla is still something I'll come back for every time. And this past week, when I went to Taco Bell to try the new Cantina Burrito, you better believe I got that fucking, that quesadilla again as well. And it just reaffirmed everything I said last week. I just can't believe Taco Bell has some new menu items that are this good. And they really are. I highly recommend the Cantina crispy taco, the quesadilla, and then the burrito, pretty good. It's not incredible, but it's pretty good. And there is now a Cantina soft taco that I did not try. There's also a Cantina rice bowl, which I also didn't try. But to those 2 items, I say, fuck you, I don't care. But yeah, shout out to Taco Bell, shout out to the Cantina menu. Again, if you didn't rush out to your nearest Taco Bell after last week, well then maybe you'll think differently this time around and go do that. But that's really it for what I've been eating. Shout out to Taco Bell. Now, as for what I've been playing, I got a little bit of an excuse this week. Not really much to say here. I don't know, man. The weekends, it's just hard. The weekends have been really where I'm able to mostly play video games. And this past Saturday, I had to go to work. Took half my day. Kind of wasn't feeling it when I came home because I was just kind of tired. Watched a lot of Curb Your Enthusiasm. And then Sunday, it was like that, those days where it's like, I'm overdue. I'm overdue to be like a productive human, a good boyfriend, a good housekeeper. So I had to like go grocery shopping, make breakfast, mow the lawn, pull some weeds out of the garden bed, just clean up around the house, do some serious laundry, that kind of thing. It just became one of those days where it's like, I'm going to sacrifice this weekend, basically, not doing a damn thing I want to do. Because Saturday I had to go to work, and Sunday I got to do house cleaning and prepping for the week and all that. But I'm sacrificing this weekend knowing full well next weekend it's on. I'm not cleaning a goddamn thing. I'm not spending a minute at my job. I'm not doing anything other than what I want to do. So this past weekend, I'll be honest. Anytime I had a moment of free time, I was just sore, tired, because it was a very labor-intensive weekend, not a very relaxing weekend. So I spent all my little free moments basically just watching Curb Your Enthusiasm, which... Side note, shout out to Curb Your Enthusiasm. I've been trying to get around to watching that show for a very long time. And now that I finally am watching that show, I must say, it is probably one of like the funniest shows I've ever seen. Top 10? Absolutely. Top 5? That's to be determined, but it's definitely a top 10 greatest TV shows of all time. It is very fucking good. So yeah, mostly whenever I got free time, watch a little hockey, watch a little Curb Your Enthusiasm. Did I want to play Wasteland 3? Yes. Did I play a little Wasteland 3? Yeah, like maybe a couple hours, but I'm very far into the game. I'm fighting the last of the Patriarch's 3 children right now, and so I think after I finish that last fight, I should be able to just, what I assume happens is, not spoiler alert, I just assume you probably end up fighting the Patriarch and then the game ends. So I'm pretty sure I'm within like the last 5 hours or so of this game. But I'm just kind of at a wall right now where I'm really enjoying the game, but I'm not fully in the mood. I kind of get the itch to go back to Disney. It's been a minute since I've gone and like really spent a day at a theme park. So I kind of have an itch to go ride Tron and then just pretend I'm on vacation for an afternoon and just run around Tomorrowland and be sad because Disney doesn't inject any money in their theme parks and they use all their fucking profits from churros and overpriced cheeseburgers to inject more shitty content into Disney Plus. But sounds good right now. Sounds good. Let's go look at a castle. I don't know. That's it for what I've been playing. So plan this weekend, get back to Wasteland 3 because now Open Roads is out. Diablo is coming to Game Pass as of the day this podcast is going live. So I really want to play Diablo 4. I still haven't finished Dead Island 2. So I'm with gaming right now. I'm feeling weeded. I'm deep in the weeds. I'm trying to finish up a book I'm reading, but I can't. It's stressful. Listen, man. I think I'm just gonna take a load off, do some meditating, and ask God what I should do next with my free time whenever I get some. So that's it for what I've been playing. Kinda. I don't know why I've been watching so much hockey lately. I don't really know what that's all about, but I have been watching just a weird amount of hockey, and it's fun because it's like I can use the Logitech G Cloud and play Wasteland 3 while I watch hockey, but then I find myself like, I haven't really followed hockey since I was like 8 years old, so I don't really know what's going on here, but it's given me a weird sense. I must say, final tangent, I swear we'll move on after this. Watching so much hockey, getting back into hockey to this extent, is making me weirdly patriotic. As someone who was born in Massachusetts, raised in Georgia, and now lives in Florida, I'm feeling weirdly patriotic for Canada, a place I've never been to. Although last summer when I went to Detroit, I did see Canada from across the water, so I've seen Canada in person. I've just never been there. But I don't know, man. I feel like I got to go stop by the grocery store, pick up a 6-pack of Labatt Blue, and sing the national anthem. I don't fucking know. Maybe I'll go to Epcot this weekend, stop by the Canadian Pavilion, and pay my respects to the cast members visiting from Canada to work at Disney World. Maybe that's what I'll do. I'll say, hey, I'll talk to them the way like white people talk to like native Spanish speakers or various people of Asian descent and do like the slow, loud, offensive enunciation thing. I'll go up to the white Canadian cast member and I'll go, I really like your hockey. Wow, your English is very good. I'll do one of those. I'll make it super offensive. And so I've been playing Wasteland 3. All right, guys, let's take a quick break, drink some water, jump into the Polygon interview with Phil Spencer, everything that's going on here. Talk a little bit about some concerns going on regarding Xbox, and then we'll get to listener comments and all that stuff and call it a day. All right, so let's just jump right into the news. So Phil Spencer, GDC, we talked about this a lot last week, right? GDC took place, Game Developer Conference, and Phil Spencer was, of course, there. And during his time there, Polygon, the media outlet, got a pretty good extensive interview with Phil, where they were able to talk to him about a multitude of topics, get some really in-depth, really long responses, and it's pretty good stuff. So first of all, of course, I'm going to recommend you to Polygon because I don't want to, take, they did the legwork getting this interview done and everything. I don't want to take all the attention away from their hard work. So if you really want to get all the nitty-gritty, go to polygon.com, read the full in-depth interview yourself. I did try to trim it as much as I could to, one, keep things concise and keep a good pace and conversation for the sake of the podcast, and two, out of respect for Polygon, because it's not really fair to like take all their hard work and then just read it verbatim on the podcast. That's just driving clicks away from them, and they earned them. So that. Second of all, while I did trim it, it is still pretty extensive, so we got a lot of stuff to pick from, read from, and so I tried to organize a little bit, break it down to topics, highlight some key points to fixate on, to talk about, but bear with me because we are going to have to just do some straight up reading to get through some of these questions and to get into some of the topics. So there are a couple main things that was talked about, which is just one, the first main topic they discussed with Phil was the change in the game development, basically just how the industry is really changing and the cost of game development is going up like crazy. And there's just a lot of things we've seen the industry change and kind of his thoughts on that. That's the first part. The second part is they ask about the recent layoffs Microsoft did with Activision Blizzard, where 1,900 people at Xbox in total lost their job. And then the last thing is basically talking about the potential for Xbox entering the handheld market space, as more and more rumors point to the idea of Xbox having a handheld for their next generation console, or a handheld option as one of the next Xbox handhelds, or pieces of hardware. Goddamn, let's just get into the interview. So Polygon opens and has this little excerpt, which I'll read. It says, Polygon spoke with Phil Spencer during GDC and though the conversation ranges from the possibility of handheld console to trouble with closed platforms, blah, 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 and they go on explaining some of Phil's whatever. That just kind of sets the stage for what all happened, although I kind of already talked about that. But let's start out by talking about this topic, this overarching topic of this changing landscape in games development, where Polygon says, Spencer's viewpoint to a collision of rising budgets, diversifying business models, and the exceptional financial risk now required to meet the audience expectations of AAA games. He specifically points to the astronomical budgets of big budget games, which have created a knot of problems and has been a challenge to disentangle. And as for Spencer, the path forward is to abandon assumptions about exclusivity and attract new customers who have cooled on the console experience. So with that context, well, that's the opening context. Then there's a little more context before they get into the interview question. So for context, Polygon says, Phil talks about how things used to work with budgeting and greenlight video games back in the day, where you have a price, an amount of money you want to make off a game. You have an idea for what the game is going to be, how many units you can sell, and then you kind of scale up the development team based on that, and you select the price point for the game you're trying to build, and you try to, pre-guess the money. Like, this is how much we'll sell it for. This is roughly how many units we think we can sell. This is how much money we should be able to make off of that game. And with all that said, this is the budget we have to hire people, the timeline we had to develop the game, etc., etc. Basically saying that game development used to be a little more cut and dry in terms of how the budget worked, how you greenlight a game or shoot down the idea of a game. But now it's just changed so much. In recent years, games are sold across multiple storefronts, not just one. And usually the name of the game is to sell a shit ton of copies in the early weeks of a game going on sale, and then after a couple weeks, deeply discount the game to try or get it into a subscription service to try and get this second wave of player support. Plus, games take way longer to create. They take way more people to make, and the amount of money required to make a game has just gone up astronomically. And so then the expectations of how a game should perform have changed quite a bit. And he's just saying that to kind of set the groundwork. Like, it's changed a lot from where we were with a game like Army of Two in 2008 all the way to a game like Starfield in 2023. So Phil's top three responses, setting the stage with all that, he outlines the three factors that he says are the main contributing reasons why the industry has shifted, why budgets are ballooning, why games are so much harder to create than they used to be. And he says, number one, the cost really reduces the risk that publishers are willing to take. When previous games needed to sell a few 100,000 units to justify their cost, new games need to sell many millions of units to justify their costs. If you're a publisher, that's a pretty big number in a world that already has a lot of video games to choose from. How are you going to establish this thing? Am I willing to take a risk on a new IP, on a new kind of game, when the earnout risk is that high? I think the impinges on creativity of the industry, which I don't love. Creativity is like the cornerstone of what we should be about in gaming. So that's part one. Part two is that the cost is particularly prohibitive for exclusive games that can only reach so many players. So as Phil explains in the interview about the perils of exclusivity and of having walled gardens or ecosystems where games are only available on this one platform or another, these games need to make additional money to justify the console maker subsidizing the cost of the console, which Spencer explains as the case for exclusivity getting pressured as the cost of gaming goes up. Basically meaning that it's harder than ever to justify exclusive games when Microsoft has to eat some of the cost on every Xbox sold in order to get you into their walled garden or their ecosystem. Then they have to sell you on the game, but the game is way more expensive to make, takes way longer to make, and then they're expected to sell it at the same price they were selling at 15 years ago or just $10 more, which isn't a whole lot more money. And when you add all that up, it's like, well, damn, now we have to sell even more copies of this game because with it being exclusive to Xbox, we're missing out on all the potential money we could be making by having it available on PlayStation, on Switch, whatever, right? And so now there's even more pressure to make more money. Although what he leaves out is, of course, when the game is exclusive, when it's a first-party game, you rake in 100% of the revenue from every game sold. So if you sell Halo on Xbox, Microsoft takes in 100% of that revenue. Whereas if Ubisoft sells a copy of Far Cry on Xbox, Ubisoft gets like 60-70% of that money, and then Xbox takes like a 30% cut because it's sold on their platform. So it does leave out the point where when you have console exclusive games, even though you have to sell far more games in order to make the kind of money you're looking for, you do make more money per game sold because you don't have to split it with someone else. You're not splitting the money with PlayStation when you're putting your game on your platform. So that's also a factor to consider. And then the third point Phil Spencer points to is that the console market, and this is the thing Phil's always talking about, so I think this is his number one point. I highlighted part of this where it says, according to Spencer, the console market has not grown in the past year. Though Xbox, PlayStation, and Nintendo continue to sell consoles, Spencer notes that many console gamers are simply upgrading, or to put it another way, they're not new to the market, and they're not going to contribute to the growth. Without new customers, everybody else's customer is your success state. This is the part I highlighted. Phil says, you can't succeed unless you draw in customers from other publishers and on other platforms. And because you're not finding new customers with the games that you're building, everybody's kind of fighting over the same size pie. Now, I highlighted this because this is something that Microsoft and PlayStation are continuously talking about. They have both been talking about the same thing, is that when you do the math, there's roughly about 200 million people out there in the world that are console gamers, people who will buy a console for video gaming, whether that's Nintendo Switch, PlayStation, Xbox this, Xbox that, whatever it is, it's about 200 million people. And this is a problem because, and I hope I'm not stepping on my feet by getting to this conversation. No, we'll save some of that for later. So just to give you we'll get into this idea a little deeper because I have some notes I wrote on it. But, the problem is the more and more ground you lose to PlayStation and the less the industry grows, the more it just stays capped at that 200 million players, it becomes a struggle because PlayStation and Xbox are so one or the other for most gamers that it's like the more people buy PlayStation, the less people buy Xbox. And that, for Nintendo doesn't seem to really affect them all that much. Nintendo will sell consoles to people who will buy Xbox, who will buy PlayStation, who won't buy Xbox, who won't buy PlayStation. Nintendo's just going to sell hardware to whoever, no matter what. I mean, most Xbox people also have a Nintendo Switch. Most PlayStation people also have a Nintendo Switch, but the same can't be said about the other two. Most Xbox people don't have PlayStations, and most PlayStation people don't have Xboxes. Some do, especially a lot of us more hardcore gamers who are really embedded in the system and really into the, this is our main hobby. This is something we're really into. Yeah, but most people, no. You get an Xbox or a PlayStation, not an Xbox and a PlayStation. And so the more PlayStation gets that market share, that capped 200 million people, the harder it is for Xbox to justify a AAA exclusive game that once would have cost them like $800,000 to make and now costs them a game that would probably cost them like 30, 40, $50 million, 15 years ago, that now costs them $300, $400 million to make today. And so it's a very different, it's just a very different industry, and you're losing market share. You're not able to grow and expand the number of people who are interested in console gaming in the first place, and the cost of making your games is just going up and up and up. And so naturally, talking about this leads to, and we'll circle back to this with some other points in a little bit, but naturally, this leads kind of to the layoffs. It's like, okay, well, speaking of costs going up and the market not expanding, you guys laid off 1,900 people recently. What do you have to say about that? What do you attribute having to make that decision to? And Phil says, I'll say the thing that has me most concerned for the industry is the lack of growth. And when you have an industry that's projected to be smaller next year in terms of players and dollars, you get a lot of publicly traded companies that are in the industry that have to show their investors growth, because what else does somebody own a share of someone else's stock if it's not going to grow? The side of the business that then gets scrutinized is the cost side, because if you're not going to grow the revenue side, then the cost side has been challenged. So that's what they're kind of facing. And again, this comes back to the age-old thing. All these companies, they're hubris, just assuming things would be good forever during COVID, and then being like, oh, the things are kind of normalizing, and now we got to justify this added cost of all these developers we own and all these people we employ, and is this sustainable? And so Phil says we're a business, and I've said this over and over again, and I highlighted this next sentence. He says, quote, I don't get any luxury of not having to run a profitable, growing business inside of Microsoft. And we are that today. But just across the industry, you mentioned it, I'm sitting here at GDC. I reflect on my friends of mine in the industry who've been displaced. I don't want an industry to be a place where people can't, with confidence, build a career. So that's why I keep pivoting back to, how does the industry get back to growth? But the question about us at Xbox, or for any of the teams that are out there, is really an outcome of an industry that's not growing. It can grow and it will grow again, but you see this time right now that the implications have human impact, and we should all reflect on that and think about it. Spencer continuously returns to the idea of exclusivity and says that, and with the knowledge that Xbox has ported 5 games recently to likes of Nintendo and PlayStation platforms, with Sea of Thieves and Hi-Fi Rush, etc., Spencer says that this is a way to bring more players and sales to old games. And then I highlight this in red as like a huge thing to note. But it's also a way to break some old industry habits like exclusivity that may be responsible for the stagnation of the console market. Let me just wrap up with this little excerpt, and then we'll talk about this because I have a lot to say here. Phil says, quote, I will say every decision we make today and tomorrow is for the better of Xbox. I know sometimes things get weaponized and that there's some evil in the background that's making us do things. And then it says Phil hates exclusives, and that's why he says, this is him imitating people saying things. Phil hates exclusives. That's why we're like PlayStation, Switch now. Every decision we make is going to make Xbox stronger in the long run. It doesn't mean everyone's going to agree with every decision we make, but it's fundamental for how we make decisions. So let's back up on this. I highlighted this excerpt in particular as kind of like a red flag, where he says it's also a way to break some old industry habits, talking about putting their games on PlayStation and Nintendo, break old industry habits like exclusivity that may be responsible for the stagnation of the console market. So here's the thing, and the layoffs are sad, and I understand why he's putting it the way he's putting it from a business standpoint. I understand at the end of the day that it's probably not Phil's decision to lay off a bunch of people. These are things that are kind of thrust upon the Xbox community, but it is gross because they didn't have to grow the way they grew. They chose to do that and put themselves in that situation, but we don't have to get into that topic because the bigger thing I want to talk about here is Phil talking about this reoccurring issue of lack of growth in the industry. So if we back up to even the early days of Game Pass, really the mid to late Xbox One generation, the narrative does shift to this idea of trying to grow the Game Pass user base. This is basically Xbox's immediate pivot. Once Phil enters the scene and we start seeing initiatives like Xbox games come to PC, day and date. I mean, remember the controversy when Quantum Break came out, day and date on Xbox One and PC back in 2016, and how people were like, this is ridiculous. You're putting these games on Xbox. Now Xbox has no exclusives. Why are you doing this? And then eventually that rolls into Game Pass coming out, and then Game Pass gets a PC version. And then the big initiative for Game Pass this whole time really has been about trying to grow Game Pass PC, because that's where a huge market of traditionally non-Xbox players are. And then, of course, trying to do cloud streaming on mobile devices and tablets, and trying to get more mobile support for Xbox and get Xbox more ingrained in the mobile industry. That's a huge part of why they bought Activision Blizzard King, is to get King and to get a strong foothold in the mobile space. And they talk about wanting to build an Xbox kind of storefront for iOS and Android. And this is the big talking point, is for Phil and Xbox for a long while at this point, has been trying to grow outside the walls. I think Sony has been talking about this for a long time with the limited population of people who are willing to console game. Really ever since Sean Layden left PlayStation, that was in 2018. And Phil's been kind of hinting at this and driving us towards this point, I would say as long as he's been at Xbox, especially ever since Xbox started bringing games to PC, and then Game Pass formed and became kind of the main initiative for the company. So you see both major players kind of in their own way getting to the same thing. The thing is, PlayStation doesn't have to talk so much and be so dire and make such drastic moves because they're winning. They're in the top spot, and if anything, they're eating into Xbox's market share of that limited 200 million people pie, whereas Xbox is losing bits of the pie. The pie doesn't change in size; it stays the same size, but Xbox is losing pieces of the pie to PlayStation as it continues to grow and become more and more of a behemoth, and they become smaller and smaller. And so that is why Xbox is so all about flipping the table, changing the narrative. Let's throw some old games on PlayStation. Cloud streaming, one subscription service that gives you everything. Let's buy Activision. Let's buy Bethesda. Let's try to get a storefront on iOS and Android. Let's try to do all of these things and be in all these places. Whereas PlayStation, for the most part, is just trying to make some fucking video games to sell PS5s. And while, yes, they are dabbling in other things and definitely testing the markets and supporting PC, which would have seemed unheard of a few years ago for PlayStation to do, Xbox is definitely the brand taking more drastic measures in trying to expand. So I think it's clear and it's fair to say that in the case of Xbox, they have more of a pressing need to pivot and to pivot fast and to pivot hard and to grow in new ways than PlayStation. But in either case, both of these businesses are really dealing with the same thing in the same issue. And the reason why I really want to highlight this specific excerpt here, I'm going to read the whole little block again, but I really red flagged the bottom half of it, is because I want to talk about this idea of exclusives and being maybe this old thing of an old, this old bygone kind of thing we've hung on to, where it says, Spencer continually returns to the idea of exclusivity. This year, Xbox has ported 4 exclusive games to other consoles like Nintendo, Switch, and PlayStation 5. For Spencer, this is a way to bring more players and sales to old games, but it's also a way to break some old industry habits like exclusivity that may be responsible for the stagnation of the console market. Now, I kind of took this out, but Phil goes on and on kind of explaining, like, when you look at like apps in the mobile ecosystem, right? You got an app like TikTok. It's on iPhone and it's on Android. It's not an exclusive app. It's not like, iPhone users have TikTok and Android users or Android users don't have TikTok. Android users have Facebook, but iOS users have Instagram, but Android has Snapchat, and it's like this back and forth of exclusivity. It is multiple platforms where the thing exists everywhere. And this is the thing I can't square with Phil Spencer, because he keeps talking like this, but he never has a way to really make sense of it. Because I get from this emerging and growing and evolving market how it makes sense for Xbox to just put their shit everywhere, because Xbox is very PC oriented, mentally, when it comes to like how they're approaching games these days, where like, sure, play your Xbox games on your Steam Cloud, on your ROG Ally, on your Logitech G Cloud, play your Xbox games on your iPhone or your Samsung Galaxy or your tablet device, or play it on your Windows PC. I don't give a shit. Just play Xbox games everywhere. And if the industry was just PCs, Xboxes, and then like these miscellaneous devices like mobile phones and tablets and gaming handheld devices, this would be a great move, because I see what he's saying. Steam doesn't say, we only have this game on Steam and PlayStation only has that game on PlayStation, so we carry it's very open platform, just like everything is in the Windows ecosystem. And Xbox is saying, we're kind of becoming that way. We just want to have Xbox be something that's accessible on traditional home consoles, on PCs, on all types of hardware and all types of services and stuff. But the problem is, whether Xbox wants to face Sony as their main competitor or not, or admit this or not, the truth of the matter just simply is, until it isn't, and for now it still is, Sony and PlayStation is their number one competitor. And your number one competitor is not playing that game. And so it's cute to be like, well, you look at apps like TikTok and they're available on iOS and Android. They don't play an exclusivity game. It's like, but that's not how this works. Because no matter how many times you put Xbox games on PlayStation, PlayStation's not going to put their fucking games on Xbox. And so all you're doing is saying, hey, here's less of a reason to buy an Xbox. And for Xbox to put their games on PlayStation, what it really tells people is like, okay, so I can play PlayStation or I can play PC, but why the fuck would I buy an Xbox? And I understand The Game Pass subscription is their main product. It's their main hitter. It's the main reason why you buy an Xbox console instead of a PlayStation. I get that. But just thinking purely from the content availability perspective, you're not playing the same fucking game by taking your games and putting them on PlayStation, because all you're doing is strengthening PlayStation's brand by saying, we think exclusivity is a dated idea and that it's something that needs to kind of go away as the gaming industry evolves, because we're not going to get new players by saying, oh, come to Xbox, you can't play PlayStation games here, but you can play our games. Oh, come to PlayStation, you can play our games here, but you can't play Xboxes. You're gonna ostracize people by doing that. Whereas breaking down the walls and just having everything available everywhere, all you're gonna do is attract more people. Maybe, and I think this is mostly his thing. He's saying in reference to like, how do we capture back, people who once played home consoles, people who once played Xbox or PlayStation, but have since graduated, so to speak, to PC. How do we get them back into consoles? That's the only way to grow the console space. But again, unless your competitor is going to play that same game, all you're really doing is just giving people this mentality that the only thing they should consider is PC gaming or PlayStation, never Xbox. And that's really the weird thing here. That's really like the apples to oranges thing, because I don't know, man. Apple does have apps they don't put on. Apple stays dominant by having features and apps that they don't bring to Android. Like, yeah, sure, Apple Music is something I can get on my Android phone because Apple Music as a service just demands that it be available everywhere in order to succeed. But like, I have Apple TV included with my T-Mobile subscription, but I never watch Apple TV ever. And the one time I tried to watch it, I was out and about somewhere. I tried to pull up on my phone. I'm like, damn, Apple TV's not available on Android. You have to have an iPhone to watch Apple TV on your phone. And you think about things like iMessage, which is like the number one fucking feature. It's so stupid. It's so fucking trivial. I know everyone outside the United States looks at us and laughs because it's like, why the fuck are we so fixated on these proprietary built-in messaging apps that no one uses outside the US? But iMessage is like the killer app of iPhone, basically, where like by not letting Android have that shit, Apple's able to help maintain a certain level of dominance in the market. So it's kind of a similar thing with Xbox and PlayStation, where like PlayStation's not going to put Spider-Man and God of War and Horizon on Xbox, but they'll gladly let you put your games on PlayStation. Fuck yeah. But at the end of the day, it just gives people more and more reason to be like, yeah, Xbox is cool, but why would I buy that when all my friends are on PlayStation, when all my games are on PlayStation, when PlayStation has all of Xbox's games and all the games Xbox doesn't have? So I understand what Phil's saying in a theoretical level, but I don't see how it works unless you can also convince PlayStation that they need to be opening, bringing down the walls and opening up their ecosystem and putting their games everywhere and anywhere, So if that doesn't happen, if we don't get Helldivers 2 on Xbox anytime soon, then all it does is just make Xbox look even more weak compared to PlayStation. So I get what he's saying, but I don't get how it works by just playing his part. If anything, it just makes Xbox weaker compared to the competition. And so that's the thing I don't get. And if we're going to continue to play this game, or better yet, if we're not going to be able to control how PlayStation does their thing, then the only way Xbox can really differentiate themselves and get attention and get people to want to come to Xbox is through exclusivity. So I don't really, if this is kind of a little bit of something we talked about last week, where it's like, it depends what direction Xbox is headed in and how the next few years play out. If your only obligation is to get more Game Pass subscribers and get more people engaging with Xbox content, then yeah, this makes sense. This method makes sense. Forgo the console space, forget about trying to be competitive there, and just go about trying to get subscribers to Game Pass, whether they're playing on PC, mobile devices, home consoles, whatever, handhelds. But if you're trying to also keep the hardware space alive too, you need the exclusives. Otherwise, you're just going to fucking die. And I don't know, man. By not having the games, I mean, Microsoft. Isn't that how Windows Phone died? Because it couldn't get the app support, because it couldn't get the major social media sites and stuff to build native apps for Windows Phone. So if you are giving your exclusivity to PlayStation, but they're not giving their exclusivity to you, you're just going to end up like Windows Phone and die again. And so I don't know. I don't know how to read this and make sense of it without it really just kind of in a roundabout way being Phil Spencer admitting that at the end of the day, the thing that matters is Game Pass subscribers and people engaging with Xbox as a brand and a service, even if it comes at the cost of the home console. And listen, I believe Phil Spencer likes console gaming. That's something he does want to see continue to exist and thrive. And it's not, I don't think Phil Spencer's saying, like, to be honest, I want to get out of the console market. It's kind of a stressful thing that I don't think it's working out for us. I just want to go do something else. I don't think that's where Phil Spencer's heart is at. I think he genuinely loves the console space and wants to continue to support it. I just don't know how any of us are supposed to sit here and take it seriously that we're going to have a prolonged and continued healthy Xbox hardware market if this is the kind of rhetoric we're getting from Xbox's leadership, and this is the kind of path forward that they see. This isn't what I see. This is what they are saying is the path forward, is to break down the walls, eliminate exclusivity, get away from that kind of stuff, make these platforms more ubiquitous everywhere. Maybe that makes sense for Xbox in the position they're in, but for the position PlayStation's in, the best thing they can do is continue to be a walled garden with exclusive content you can't get anywhere else. And that's going to immediately, build a contrast. It's not going to work in Xbox's favor. So I don't know, it's hard. And one little extra cap before we talk about the potential of Xbox making their own handheld. One little excerpt here, little anecdote about like the new generation and generations going forward and Gen Z gamers and stuff that Phil throws out here that I think is relevant. Let me just read the quote. He says, this notion that Xbox can only be this one device that plugs into a television isn't something we see with Gen Z research, because nothing else is like that for them. Some of them will have an iPhone, some of them will have an Android, but the games and everything will be the same. I can still get TikTok on both of them. Okay, so here's the quote I had earlier. I didn't realize I kept it in. At least for now. All of their stuff is available wherever they want. So for Xbox, our brand pivot, as we attract and maintain relevancy with a younger audience, is that Xbox is the place where I can find great games I want. But that's just the thing. It's like, I get that. And listen, man, I've been made a believer in recent history more than ever, because in the past month, I've done the majority of my Xbox gaming on a little streaming tablet that's not even made by Xbox. And in recent years, I've played more Xbox games on PC than I would ever imagine, although it's still not that much. And listen, I engage with Xbox in all kinds of ways. I sometimes even play Xbox on my phone. I play it on the Series S. I play on the Series X. So I understand the benefits and the convenience and the attractiveness of having Xbox be a whole lot more than just this one box that you plug in to your TV and play games natively from. But at the same time, I don't know. Is that how Gen Z is? Is that what we're supposed to gather from this? Is that younger generations, newer generations of gamers aren't as into this idea of like, which ecosystem are you ingrained in? Are you a PlayStation guy or are you an Xbox guy? And they're more of, oh yeah, I play Fortnite. And I think that's a slippery slope that I'm a little worried about, is that there are so many of these games nowadays, Fortnite, Roblox, Minecraft, Warzone, where it's like, I'm not a gamer, but I play Fortnite. It's like a social space where there's a lot of like these younger kids where, back when I was 13 years old, for me and my friends, it was Xbox. We played Call of Duty, we played Halo, and we were on Xbox Live parties, and we were playing on Xbox because none of our friends were playing on PlayStation, and we played Xbox games in the Xbox ecosystem, Left 4 Dead, and that was the shit we were doing because we were dedicated to that platform, and it was the platform that had the stuff we wanted to engage with. But I guess what the research kind of suggests is that with kids these days, it's less about like, oh man, I want to get an Xbox so I can play Call of Duty with my buddies, and it's more about like, my buddies play Fortnite. Whether it's Xbox, PlayStation, Switch, my phone, their PC, whatever, that's kind of secondary because everyone's chatting, not on Xbox Live parties, they're chatting on Discord. And they're playing Fortnite, not necessarily on Xbox, because they can play it on basically any device they have access to these days. And for a lot of people, it's like, yeah, I'm not really a gamer. I do play Fortnite, but it's more like my social space and less like my hobby as a gamer, if that makes sense. And, you know, like, why would I buy a dedicated device that's $400 or $500 just for playing a video game like Fortnite when I could just play Fortnite on my phone, when I could just play Fortnite on my PC, when I could just play Fortnite on my Nintendo Switch, because everyone has a Switch. You know, you don't have to be a gamer to have a Switch. Everyone just has a Switch. And so I guess that's the telemetry they're getting, is that, you know, obviously it's not so cut and dry. There's bleed over and stuff. But for the most part, I guess what they're seeing is that at some point after the millennial generation, it becomes less about like, ooh, I'm a Xbox gamer, I'm a PlayStation gamer. It becomes more of like oh, I played this game. Oh, what do you play it on? It's like, oh, right now I have an iPhone 13 and I played on that. Or, oh, you know, I played on my old PS4. Whatever. It's what I have laying around. It's like, if that really is the direction we've headed in, and that people play gaming more casually and less often, it's more of a hobby and a social space thing, and less of like, I'm a gamer and I ain't playing 70-hour RPGs. It's like, I guess that makes sense, but we're also seeing this thing where apparently like the data suggests that people are spending more time in games than ever before, spending more money on video games than ever before. So like, they can't all just be playing fucking Fortnite, you know? Like, it's, at some point, someone's got to be dedicating themselves to these platforms. So I don't know. I just feel of many different ways about this. Is it a bad idea to chase after the PC market and the mobile market? No, not necessarily. But should you do it at the risk of losing your bread and butter market, your home console gamer, hardcore gaming market? I don't think so. So don't lean too heavy into that direction to the point where, you know, you sacrifice the thing you already have in hopes that you get something new and even better in return. Because if that blows up in your face, then you lose everything. So I don't know, man. It's really slippery slope Xbox is headed down, and I still don't really feel comfortable or confident that the future of Xbox hardware is alive and well and vibrant, and that maybe beyond one more go that we're really going to have Xbox hardware continue to be like a guaranteed thing. And this is the kind of conversation that really gives me that concern. So, all right, not to beat a dead horse too much with that. So let's put a pin in that for now, and then wrap up with this final topic Phil has with Polygon. Why do I keep saying Polygon? Polygon. All right. So when asked about is Xbox working on a handheld, would Xbox consider making a handheld? Phil Spencer says, "I want my Lenovo Legion Go to feel more like an Xbox. I brought the Legion Go with me to GDC. I'm on an airplane and I have this list of everything that makes it not feel like an Xbox. Forget about the brand. More like, are all my games there? Do all my games show up with save files that I want? I'll tell you, one game that doesn't right now, it's driving me crazy, is Fallout 76. It doesn't have cross-save. I want to be able to boot up into an Xbox app in full screen. I want it to be in compact mode, and I want all my social experience to be there. Like, I want it to feel like the dash of my Xbox when I turn on the television. Except I want it to on these devices." According to Phil, the Xbox hardware team, led by Rowan Sones, is considering different hardware form factors and things that they could do as it plans at the future of Xbox hardware. He says, quote, "What should we build when we find new players?" Spencer said. "That will allow people to play at times when they couldn't go play in the past." And he goes into this conversation about, like, not necessarily being about should we get an Xbox handheld, or is it a software thing, and being kind of torn between these two ideas of like hardware versus a software approach to having this more Xbox experience on handheld devices. So he says, "I like the fact that Valve, Lenovo, and Asus with their handhelds went out and innovated in a new form factor. And I will say that when I'm playing on those devices, it almost feels more like a console than a PC. 9 times out of 10. The thing is that usually frustrates me, though, is Windows-based devices. Is Windows-based issues than device-based issues, which is the area I feel ownership of. Like, I want to be able to log into it with a controller. I've got my list of things we should do, you know, Windows being part of Microsoft. From a game creator standpoint, I can then go build a single version of my game that spans more hardware and reaches more customers. And I would say for players, it reduces the friction. Like, I want to go play my console games on the go with my handheld. I don't want to only be able to buy one brand of handheld, right? And then I red flagged this last part here. He says, I want everything that we're doing in the hardware space to be great. But if somebody chooses to go play today somewhere else, I don't want them to feel like less of an Xbox player. So this is that have your cake and eat it too complex is what I wrote as the note here. So basically saying we might not make a handheld and we might not, win out in the hardware space, but we want to make sure that whether we decide to make a handheld or not, whether we decide to double down and support consoles or not, we want people to be able to engage with Xbox on every device, everywhere they go, and to still feel like they're getting the same Xbox experience and they're not lesser. But the thing I don't get about that is admitting that or capitulating to that idea is also kind of an admittance of saying that at some point in time, the Xbox console will no longer be necessary. Why is the Xbox console so necessary today? Because running games natively is just better than streaming. You don't get latency, you don't get lag, you're not beholden on the internet connection or for the game to run, especially if it's a single player or offline game. The game is spec'd to run a certain way based on the hardware, and it's so simple. It's the reason why people like console gaming. You plug it in your TV, you power it on, and you just play games. It's as simple as that. Plug and play. No hassle, no firmware updates, no fucking driver installs, no any of that, no reboots, no blue screens of death, none of that. It is just simple plug and play, and that is the beauty of console gaming. But if we work super hard and invest all of our effort and focus into going, hey, all these new devices, and not to mention PCs, are all Windows-based devices, and we at Xbox are part of Microsoft, which owns and controls Windows, instead of creating a new Xbox handheld, instead of creating a new console, why don't we just focus on our ability to manipulate Windows to make it so inherently and naturally compatible and good and capable with all these various devices and all these various computers to just naturally be as plug and play of a software experience as the Xbox hardware is. And if you take all that magic sauce away from the Xbox console, because you're able to manipulate Windows to make it just so good to play on handhelds and so good to play on Windows PCs and so good to play on iPhones, then at what point do you completely develop out the benefit of a console? Now, I want to be clear about this. I'm not trying to suggest that we should withhold innovation and pushing, innovation of the industry and of the space in an effort to preserve my comfortable and preferred method of playing games, that is console gaming. But I am saying, if we're going to continue to focus so much on the software side of things, I'm sorry, didn't mean to knock that over, on the software sides of things and making things that aren't necessarily our hardware so compatible and so native with all of our games and services, at some point we're going to basically develop out every excuse someone might have to buy an Xbox. Our games are on PlayStation. Our services are on every other platform. Picking up a Lenovo tablet or a Dell PC is just as plug and play for Xbox games as it was back in the day to plug up an Xbox 360 and play Dead Space 2. If we keep knocking down these barriers, making things easier and easier, it's great. It's going to lead for more choices, more ways to play, and an easier way to find a path forward for growth, which is what Xbox cares about. But I just can't help but think that all of these great ideas and great innovations and great improvements and great opportunities to grow come at the expense of the Xbox console. It just continues to gray the value of buying a $500 Xbox Series X. And I know we got a ways to go. It's going to be a long time before, streaming game is literally just as good, if not better, than playing a game natively on an Xbox. I get that. But every day we get closer, and all the verbiage and all the ways in which Phil answers all the questions in this interview to me just seem like they're really focused on trying to get in new places and be really good and compelling in new places to attempt to expand the Xbox player base, which is great. But it sounds like everything they are working on today comes at the cost of the console experience, and it comes at the cost of the value that an Xbox console demonstrates, an Xbox Series S or an Xbox Series X. And he's not saying, oh, we're not making a handheld. The rumors suggest that they are making their own handheld, and I hope they do. But maybe they aren't, and maybe they're going to try to find software solutions to do it, right? And Xbox has been really good at using software solutions to try and do a lot of really cool things that we all didn't used to lean on or look to as basic, regular, consumer-facing quality of life options that, existed until pretty recently. That's a little wordy, but what I mean by that is, like, I didn't really ever consider playing video games on my mobile phone, and Microsoft in the past few years has really convinced me that playing Xbox on my phone is a viable thing to do. And I didn't really think that game streaming would be anything that would be all that great, especially living in a market like the greater Orlando area, not like a place like LA or New York or something like that. But no, I stream games to my Logitech G Cloud all the time, and they run really fucking great all the way out here in bumfuck outside of Orlando area that I'm in. So I mean, it's just I don't know, man. It's like I'm of two minds of all of it, because I hear all this. I'm like, I'm excited. I'm like, yeah. Yes, make it easier for people to experience Xbox on devices like the Lenovo and the Steam Deck and the Asus, ROG Ally, whatever, all these devices, right? Let's continue to make it better and more seamless. Let's continue to grow Xbox by making it attractive for people in other countries where console gaming isn't as popular to maybe subscribe to Game Pass so they can play it on their mobile device or whatever. But I just can't help but feel like, in the midst of all of that, and yeah, PlayStation players are getting Sea of Thieves, and that's awesome, and it's doing really well over there, and people are excited for that, and I'm happy for those players. I can't help but feel like, fuck, how many more of these? I'm standing here talking to the microphone, looking at my Xbox Series S here in the corner. I'm like, how many more of these kinds of things am I going to get before it just doesn't make business sense anymore to build another one of these things? Because again, as Phil even said himself, like people act like there's some evil force controlling Phil, or Phil doesn't love Xbox or whatever. Everything they're doing is for the betterment of the brand. But at the end of the day, Phil, you kind of mentioned yourself, there's someone else, just like with the layoffs at Activision Blizzard King, there's someone else who says, hey, the business reality is the cost of making a game has gone up exponentially. The growth is stagnant. We have a huge staff. Something's got to give. And if we keep this up, I just worry that at some point it's going to be like, hey, we're making hand over fist money selling our games on PlayStation. People are engaging with Game Pass on all different devices because of the great job we've done getting that service on all these devices and making our software experience so seamless and accessible and fun and easy to pick up and play, that people aren't buying Xbox. And now we're in a situation where it doesn't make business sense to keep making this thing and R&D in this thing and taking a loss on every console sold. And at some point, we're just going to have to say goodbye to the Xbox console as we know it. And I just can't help but feel like that's kind of what, Phil's not saying like, oh, I'm looking forward to the demise of Xbox hardware. That's not what he's saying, but it does sound like with everything he's saying, it's like, oh, that's probably what's going to happen as a result of all the things we're trying to do here. And that just makes me very sad, Panda. So, I don't know, man, not to be so dour, not to be so just sad about it. It's hard to read all this and not get these takeaways because it doesn't make sense in the other way. Because I know if the interviewer asked, it sounds like you're talking about a lot of things that could hinder the Xbox console market. Can you say anything regarding your commitment to Xbox consoles? I know Phil Spencer would say something. Let me tell you, first and foremost, we are committed to the Xbox hardware. We're committed to our most hardcore fans that buy the hardware, that support the console. I know he would say something along those lines, and I'm sure he probably also loves making the console and supporting the brand in that way. But again, the decisions you guys are making as a business are running counter to those words you would say. And at some point, someone higher up the ladder is going to look and say, doesn't make business sense to keep making these $500 boxes because people are buying our games on this console. People are playing our games on this platform. They're subscribing to this service. And the Xbox hardware is not what's moving the needle. And I don't know, man. I'm happy with Xbox hardware, man. I got my Game Pass subscription. It's a great feature. I love the games we get on Xbox. It's more than enough content to ever keep me busy and satiated with the amount of games I had to play, the amount of great games I have to play. But if someone doesn't own a console and they're in the market for one, I don't blame them for going with PS5. I don't really see how you could make it make sense to get an Xbox, really. Because at this point, I'm not really all that convinced that the exclusive Xbox has are going to remain exclusive, you know? Maybe Halo Infinite for a decent amount of time, but like, I don't know. I think Starfield probably comes to PlayStation eventually. I don't know when, but I think it happens. I don't know. That's it on all that for now. Let's wrap up. We got one more story, and then we'll get into the rest of the podcast. So, and this honestly is kind of a conversation that could be fed into everything we just talked about, because if anything, it's a scary, alarming account from people who know best, and it kind of supports our greatest fears as Xbox as a console manufacturer. So this is again from VGC, but it's a relay of a report from gamesindustry.biz. Some third-party publishers are reportedly expressing doubts about continuing to support the Xbox consoles amid flattening sales in Europe. So according to gamesindustry.biz head Chris Dring, who said his takeaway from GDC last week was that he thinks Xbox is in real trouble as a hardware manufacturer. He says, quote, "The other thing I heard it from a very prominent company and one not so prominent company, was that Xbox's performance in Europe is just flatlining," he said. "You can follow our monthly coverage of the games market and you can see that Xbox sales are falling. It's been falling throughout the last year and it's falling even harder this year. The phrase one major company who released a big game last year said was, 'I don't know why we bother supporting Xbox.' We mentioned on a previous podcast that we'd heard retailers in Europe are considering or had already been cutting back their Xbox stock or on their shelves. Hardware, games, that kind of thing. And now you've got third-party publishers going, we're putting a lot of effort into trying to create a Series S and X version of a game, when, to be honest with you, for us, the market's on PC and PS5. Dream continues by saying, and with Xbox putting some of their games on PlayStation now, from what I understand, the majority of them will be coming across at some point. Assuming it progresses as Xbox believes it will, I think Xbox is in real trouble as a hardware manufacturer, and that was the thing that came out of GDC for me. He wraps up by saying, I thought it would be fine, but then I didn't really factor in that some developers and publishers might just go, yeah, I don't know, is there any point? And this is when you can lose it. Yeah, I mean, this isn't promising. Europe was a very strong market for the Xbox brand, especially in the 360 days. Did all right throughout the Xbox One generation. It's been slipping in recent years really hard. And this is concerning. Yeah. Now, PlayStation's been the dominant force in Europe for the majority of time. But, Xbox's main bread and butter really being really English-speaking territories, but of course North America. Really like US, Canada, UK, and Australia, I would say, are like the biggest places for Xbox. But this is quite alarming, and I guess, I don't know, do we count the UK as Europe now? I don't really know how they want to be counted in that, and if VGC sees them that way. But anyway, this is what I'm talking about, man. Like, it becomes this thing of like, if you're just putting your old games on PlayStation, you're signaling to gamers, yeah, I don't have Halo Infinite today, I don't have Starfield today, but I do have Xbox games coming to PlayStation, and that makes me confident that these games will come to PlayStation over time. Just like how I don't feel like I need to buy a PS5 because I know I can just wait a year or two and all the PlayStation games I want to play will come to Steam, and that's what I'm doing these days. I play Helldivers on Steam. I'm going to get Spider-Man when that comes to Steam finally. I'll play Spider-Man 2 and God of War Ragnarok, same thing. I'm just waiting for the PC releases. This immediate, it's an immediate success story, right? When it's like, Sea of Thieves is the highest pre-order game on the PlayStation storefront right now. That's great until when you think about it, it's just signaling the PlayStation gamers, don't buy Xbox games. They're going to come to PlayStation eventually. And so now people are going to be like, okay, even less reason to ever buy an Xbox. And the long-term effect of this kind of move is that people are just going to not buy Xbox, and they're just going to buy PS5 or PC or subscribe to Game Pass. And, that's great. Xbox can still get their money by selling you a game on PlayStation or by getting you to subscribe to PC Game Pass. But if we care about the Xbox hardware, I get it, man. I understand if you're a publisher or developer and games are really expensive, and getting that Xbox SKU maybe doesn't cost that much more, but it's a development factor to consider. You got to do the numbers and say, well, we're going to sell 80% of our copies, 85% of our copies on PC and PS5. Is it really worth even pursuing Xbox at all? And this might be a thing we see happen where slowly but surely some publishers, maybe will start with small ones, but who knows? Eventually it could be a big one. Might just say altogether, doesn't make sense to do Xbox. We're not, sorry guys, we're not putting this game on Xbox. And that's concerning, and it's scary, and I really hope that we don't get there. But again, just kind of for all the same reasons we just spoke about, it's like I don't see how this wouldn't be a concern for most people, because the way Phil Spencer talks and the way Xbox is making moves and stuff, it just suggests that this is a natural and inevitable future. So I hate it. I hate all of this. I don't like talking about it this way, and I don't like being this negative about it, because I fucking love playing my games on Xbox, and I would love for Xbox to continue to be a hardware manufacturer, but I just can't lie to you and say I have the full confidence that they're going to continue to be just that. But that is it really for all of our major news this week, you guys. Hopefully next week is a lot more positive. But in the meantime, let's wrap up with the important enough news stories. Stories important enough to make the podcast, but not important enough to warrant their own discussions. And we got quite a handful here to get through, so let's start at the top with Smilegate. This is the only bad, sad layoff type news this week. Smilegate Barcelona, the studio established in 2020 to develop an open-world AAA console title, has reportedly been shut down. That's according to director Stephanie Blaise, formerly of Eidos Montreal and Ubisoft, who claims, Stefan, who claims on his LinkedIn page that all employees are set to be let go from the European arm of the Korean Crossfire company. So, of course, best wishes to all those affected. Next up, VGC reports that GTA 6's release date could slip into 2026, not 2006. I wish it was 2006. Could slip into. Can you imagine if it was 2006? Then Still Searching from Census Fail just came out, and you're sitting there, dude. You just got home from FYE, and you boot up Still Searching on your iPod Classic, and you hear The Rapture, the opening track of the album The Rapture, come on. And you're just like, holy fuck, this is going to be a good album. And you sit there for 45 minutes. You make it all the way to The Priest and the Matador, the final track of the album. And you're like, my life has forever been changed because I just listened to Census Fail's Still Searching. And then I said, well, what if I told you, buddy? What if I told you, friend, that right now in the good year of 2006, you haven't seen the best yet? Because in 2 years, in 2008, Census Fail will put out their best record. Life is Not a Waiting Room. Dude, Life is Not a Waiting Room. Seminal record. If you have not listened to Life is Not a Waiting Room by Census Fail, then you have failed me as your podcast host, because that record is fucking phenomenal. And then you fucking listen to that Fireworks at Dawn opening track. Dude, so good. So emo. And if you like metal music, it'll get you into that as well, because it's got that's probably their heaviest album. Oh god, so fucking good. So emo, dude. So emo. Whew. Anyway, what are we talking about? Oh yeah. According to Kotaku, sources with knowledge of the game's production team believe that although the internal goal at Rockstar is to release the game in early 2025, it could slip into 2026, possibly. Moving the release date to 2026 is reportedly currently on the table as a fallback plan if production goes awry. Now, this is something that drew a lot of attention and a lot of upset. I understand why people will be disappointed by this, but I don't understand why people are up in arms about it. Jay Comatose actually wrote in about this topic to some extent. Says, popping in to let my fellow Xbox On listeners know that Redfall is actually fun now. I'm on my second playthrough. Well, I'm glad you're enjoying it. I already beat it. I already had my fun. I thought it was a good game when it came out. It wasn't great. It's a very flawed game, but I had fun with it from the start. I'm glad you're enjoying it, Jay Comatose. Have a beautiful day. But anyway, you said, and continue on. That was your opening remark. So I just heard that Grand Theft Auto 6 might be delayed to 2026, and it reminded me of the biggest gaming pet peeve of mine. When developers announce games several years before they're ready. I absolutely hate it when I see trailers for games that don't come out for several years, and I wish they would finish their development before they announce at the most 1 year in advance. You know, the thing that's ironic about, and I'm right there with you, man. I feel the same way. The thing that's ironic about this is Rockstar historically, and you can tell they still try to be, have been the kings of how to announce a game in regards to like when it comes out, in relation to when it comes out, because that was always their thing was like, oh yeah, we're going to have a new Grand Theft Auto this year. Here's a couple screenshots. And then the game will come out in like 5 or 6 months. And that's how they did every GTA and everything. And then the first time it slipped up was when Red Dead Redemption 2 came out, because I'll never forget, it was announced in late 2016. It was like the same day or within 24 hours of when Nintendo revealed the Nintendo Switch. And everyone was so hyped about it. And then like in 2017, they were like, nah, we got to delay it out of 2017 into 2018. And then in 2018, they're like, we got to delay it out of the spring and into the fall. And that was very uncharacteristic of Rockstar to have to do that. And so for that to happen with GTA 6 as well, where a game was leaked and they weren't able to control the messaging, so people saw the game way prematurely. And then a few months ago, they showed the trailer finally with the idea of it will be out in about a year. And now reports going that it could get delayed into the next year. Well, that signals to me, not that Rockstar don't want to continue to have that kind of awesome, short lead up to release kind of announcement reveal moment. It's just that this is a perfect example of how fucked it is right now in the games industry, where games take so long to make. They're so expensive to make. They're so finicky and difficult to produce that you could have these internal projections that are like, I think we're on track to get this fucker out early 2025. And then like 5 months later, you could be like, nope, fuck it. I was so wrong. We need at least another year before we can get this game out. And I think that's really what this is more than anything. It's not that. I believe Rockstar over most developers, and maybe this was pressure of Take-Two to kind of tease the game prematurely, which I doubt. But usually when it comes to Rockstar, they're kind of the kings of not really showing anything or saying anything until they're really close to showtime. So for them to have something like this happen, it's not guaranteed yet that the game's delayed to 2026, but it is apparently, something that's on the table, a discussion being had. For them to be the ones to have to do something like this just goes to show how fucked the development cycle is of games right now. And listen, man, I know this is easier said than done, but to me, like, I wish so badly the emphasis was on making games less pretty, less realistic, making games less large open world RPG, whatever, and just trying to find ways to get that budget down, because I think games are just so unnecessary. How overly complex and complicated and high fidelity they are. It's just so fucking silly, man. It doesn't have to be like this. But anyway, GTA is the pinnacle of like games that push the envelope with just how big they are and how expansive and how much there is to see and do. So, I mean, whatever. All right, so next up, the U.S. has filed a lawsuit against Apple, accusing it of illegally eliminating competitors to holding a monopoly over the smartphone market. In the lawsuit, the U.S. Department of Justice gives 5 key examples of areas where Apple allegedly suppresses competition, one of which being cloud stream game apps, the other being super apps, messaging, smartwatches, and digital wallets. The cloud gaming section argues that Apple has previously prevented developers from offering cloud gaming apps on the App Store, claiming that one of the main reasons for this is to force them to buy more expensive hardware. So I'll keep a close eye on this, because this clearly is going to have to go hand in hand with Xbox and their mobile marketplace and their ability to support iOS and all that. So this is relevant. Next up, Microsoft is in the process of adding mouse and keyboard support to Xbox Cloud Gaming. It's available to Xbox Inside members in the Alpha Skip Ahead ring, so be on the lookout for that as it spreads to more and more people soon. That's a good feature there. Next up, Remedy has shared new details about the Codename Condor, its co-op multiplayer control spin-off. Billed as the studio's first step towards service-based game, the title has an initial development budget of $27 million US. The game's entering full production this year with the plans to have it come to PC and Xbox Series consoles in the future. The game is going to be a service-based fixed price rather than a free-to-play title, which is very exciting to me. They said that, quote, these are premium games that may have lower initial price point, but a long tail of revenue through updates, game expansions, and potential microtransactions. I'm curious to see this game. I don't know that I want a live service control game, but I love Remedy, and I'm always curious about what they're working on, so I am very interested to see what that game looks like. Next up, Overwatch 2's PvE mode has reportedly been permanently scrapped as Blizzard struggles to find focus on the hero shooter sequel. According to Bloomberg, the PvE mode, which received 3 missions in 2023, will receive no more content due to the initial pack selling poorly. It's also claimed that as part of a company-wide reduction in staff, the game's PvE department was heavily affected. Next up, Resident Evil 9 could be an open world game. It's been claimed, speaking of games that don't need to be open world. According to ex-user Dust Golem, who has a long track record of reporting information about video games before it's made public, Resident Evil 9 is being developed as an open world title. Dragon's Dogma 2 expanded Resident Evil engine functionality for open world games. The 2 other titles being Monster Hunter Wild and Resident Evil 9, so now they have the ability to work within those confines, so we'll see. Next up, veteran video game developer Shinji Mikami has established a new company after leaving, technically Xbox by way of Tango Gameworks and Bethesda. That's according to a bio of the developer on the news shadow of the Damned Hella Remastered website, which claims Mikami has recently founded Kamui. I guess that's the name of the studio. And next up, NetEase and Marvel Games have announced a new PvP shooter set in the Marvel Universe called Marvel Rivals. The game is being developed by a new internal team at NetEase Game. Boo! And NetEase says that the team is composed of global talent who previously worked on franchises like Call of Duty and Battlefield. Marvel Rivals is a free-to-play 6v6 team-based player game set in a third-person point of view. Basically looks like Marvel Overwatch. And they have not confirmed this game for console yet. It's only confirmed for PC, but looks like a game that will come to Xbox inevitably, I believe. And then finally, a new Xbox Series S and X controller is seemingly leaked ahead of an official announcement. According to ever-reliable data miner Bill Kuhn, Microsoft has released a third controller in its Vapor series, and it will come out to everyone next month. Following the release, the Stormcloud Vapor and Dream Vapor pads Nocturnal Vapor will reportedly be released on April 9th, and the announcement will probably be made in about a week or so. The controller is expected to retail for $70 US, and that's going to do it for all of our news this week. You guys, we made it to the final and best section of the podcast, the comments, the shout-outs, youtube.com/Xbox on podcast. You click on the latest episode of the podcast, you drop a comment, and you say anything nice, anything mean, or anything mean in between. And as always, first up, I just want to please ask that if you enjoy the podcast and have access to podcast services, and that's how you consume the show, I'd greatly appreciate a 5 out of 5 rating. As always, if you don't like the show, that's absolutely fine. You are entitled to your own opinions and to each their own, but please don't leave a review. If you do love the show, feel free to leave it a 5-star review, because that will make me feel validated as a human and will make my mental health superior to how it is currently. So thank you, and we will now move on to the first comment. Only have really 3 write-ins to get to. We had 4. We already read one of them, and now we only have 3 left to get into. So shorter week on comments, but let's make the most of it. Kicking us off is none other than Mr. Mike Clark, who writes in and says, Wasteland 3 was one of my most played Xbox games last year. One of the very few games I actually bought DLC for. Dude, I want to play the DLC for this game so bad, but when I finish the main quest, I just got to move on. There's so many things I want to play right now. I just got to move on. Otherwise, like 7 things are going to end up in my backlog that I'll never get to. So, oh, man. Game Pass is stacked. I'm engrossed with Tales of Arise right now, and I'm really wanting to go play the Remnant games. It's funny you say it, because Tales of Arise was actually the game I was going to give a try before I got sucked into Wasteland. I was looking for Tales of Arise, and then I passed Wasteland 3, and it was one of those like, God, Wasteland 3 has such a fucking cool cover art. I wish I liked this game. And so I was like, you know what? Let me just test it out real quick. Let me just try it on the tablet, see how it runs on the G Cloud, and then within like an hour of dicking around, I was like, I can't believe I'm still dicking around with this thing. And I was like, you know what? I think I'm actually kind of getting sucked into this game. And the rest is history. He said, picked up Princess Peach Showtime because it just looks amazing in my opinion. Have a great weekend. P.S. You forgot to start us off with the Xbox Pledge, didn't you? Mike Clark, the Xbox Pledge of Allegiance I did a couple weeks ago was just a little funny one-off joke for the 250th episode celebration, but if people feel like the Xbox Pledge of Allegiance is something that we need to do every week, then we can make that a formality that we do at the top of the show. I don't know. Does Does it take the specialness and the silliness of it away if we say it each and every week? Or does that maybe add to the magic of it by saying it every week, because eventually it'll become a thing where regular listeners will memorize it, and then maybe it'll kind of become like a little inside joke where we all kind of say it to ourselves at the top of it. You know what? Let me test it out. I'm going to do the Xbox Pledge of Allegiance right now. And if it feels like, oh, that wasn't really funny the second time, then let's just drop it there. And if it feels like, no, this feels right, this feels like something we should do at the top of the show each and every week to show our support and our allegiance to Xbox, the brand, then we'll keep it in and we'll do it going forward. So you let me know what you think. But until then, please stand for the Xbox Pledge of Allegiance. And to whoever wrote in last week about, who made me laugh out loud like a fucking bitch about me not standing, here, you can hear my office chair. I'm pushing it back. I'm standing up. I'm crouching a little bit to reach my microphone, but I'm standing up to do the Xbox Pledge of Allegiance. And here we go. Right hand over your heart. I pledge allegiance to the brand of the gaming and entertainment division of Microsoft, and to the shareholders for which it stands, one business, under Phil, relatively profitable, with gamer score and world premieres for all. Thank you. You may now be seated. All right, you let me know how that goes for you. Is it silly boy, or do we need to cut it? Thank you, Mike Clark, for writing in. All right, next up we got Cronky with a chunky little write in here. Got a couple things. So starting off as a little non sequitur. Alone in the Dark remake is freaking awesome. It's just like a AA version of Resident Evil 2 remake, and it's just perfect. If you're on the fence, go off it and go play the game. This ad was sponsored by THQ Nordic. Cronky, I think you're the only person I've seen say anything positive about this remake, but I believe you, because both you and I have a weird propensity to enjoy games that are solid 6 out of 10s. But cool. I'm glad you're enjoying it. Anyway, to get into the meat and potato of your comments, you said, so I want your thoughts on this. I've been thinking a bit this week about the current state of the industry and where everyone knows games are too expensive, and every new title needs to rock the world and redefine the audience's concept of what a game can be, blah, blah, blah. Basically, out of control spiral of AAA games and where they cost too much and are overly ambitious. The thing is, I can't find a way to argue the consumers drove us to this point. As far as I can tell, it was a random overnight jump caused by the developers. I don't think we can blame the publishers for this. I think Todd Howard and whoever the heck runs Grand Theft Auto are the biggest culprits. On the Xbox 360, we got Grand Theft Auto 4, Grand Theft Auto 5, Red Dead Redemption. We also got Oblivion, Skyrim, Fallout 3. But then immediately afterwards, audiences were nice and happy with their gradual improvements in games. The developers randomly decided that instead of 3-year development cycles, we needed 15-year development cycles, and that games had to blow up in scale and scope. Then everyone else got bored, and now all games take 6 years or so minimum and cost $200 million to make. I can't help but think that both consumers and publishers would have been happier with the gradual improvements we were seeing in the games that look a little bit better and feel a little better than the predecessor, but also come out in a reasonable time and for a reasonable budget. So yeah, I think I blame the developers for this one, because I don't see a time when the consumers were like, no, I will not buy BioShock Infinite because it is not drastic enough of an improvement from the previous title. So, Cronky, I don't know where I am on this one, because to be honest with you, I think in a lot of ways, well, let's be honest. It's pretty easy, I think, to pinpoint when we got to this point where games began to just get too expensive and to take too long, because the 360 generation really was the last time where game development costs and timelines were pretty reasonable. And then it turns a pretty fucking hard switch as soon as you get to the Xbox One, PS4 generation. And my guess is that was the point where it's also so ironic, but I'll tell you why in a second. This is the point as you move into Xbox One where home consoles became powerful enough finally that developers could kind of act on their dreams, where it's like there's finally enough power where we can build worlds as big as we envisioned, where we can get NPC AI that is as smart as we envisioned, where we can have a player count and action and kind of like things going on a screen that are as chaotic and insane as we wanted, that we can make a game look and feel as cinematic and as realistic as we've always envisioned. And it seems like that PS4, Xbox One generation is when we hit that point where it's like the power is there. The amount of power that these consoles can output is officially there where we can do that. And that was the tipping point where it's like, if you have to ask yourself, how high fidelity does this hardware need to be for it to be like a little too, how do I want to put this? I'm having a hard time saying this, so let me try to build an analogy, which I'm so bad at anyway. But anyway, you know, like the kind of stereotype in the history where it's like in cars where it's like, you know, BMW, a beautiful, luxurious $80,000 car, but it's a piece of shit. It's always in the shop. It's expensive as hell to fix. They break down on you constantly. You got to be really good at tinkering with these things, and you got to have a lot of money or know a guy because, you know, having a nice luxury German car is a very expensive endeavor. You're constantly working on something. Something's constantly going wrong. There's always something to fixate on. Conversely, just buy yourself a nice Japanese car, a nice Honda, Toyota, nothing super fancy, nothing that's going to turn heads. It's going to cost a fraction of what the BMW costs. It's not going to be as fast. It's not going to be as sporty or luxurious or comfortable. But as long as you get your oil changes done every couple months, that Honda Civic's going to go 300,000-400,000 miles. You don't have to fucking worry about it. It's just going to go. And I guess the thing is, it's like the power of the Xbox 360 and every generation that came before that was like very Toyota Corolla, Hyundai, Santa Fe, you know, Korean, whatever, same idea. Korean cars are pretty good as well. Just like kind of run of the mill. This is a car that will run. Buy it, put miles on it, commute to everywhere you go with it, and this car will just be a fucking car for you. And once we reach the Xbox One generation and beyond into like high-end PCs and Xbox Series X and all that shit, is when consoles finally get high-end enough and powerful enough that now we're no longer in this Toyota Corolla, just do the oil changes and it will go kind of status, but we're now in this phase, we're now in this time and place where it's so high fidelity, it can do so much, it's so beautiful, it's so capable that it's now like the BMW of video game hardware, where it's like, yeah, games will look and run really well on this Xbox One or on this Xbox Series X, but it's really fucking finicky making a game that's this high end, or a game that's this cinematic, or a game that has this kind of NPC AI and fidelity and feature set and all that stuff. Because now we're at the point where the consoles can support the really difficult, nuanced, hard to pull off kind of quality of life things. You know, all you need in the car is 4 wheels, a seat, a steering wheel, some air conditioning. But we had all that with the Xbox 360. We had HD games, we had wireless controllers, we were connected to the internet, games had campaigns, they had multiplayer suites, they were 3D, they looked good enough, it was great. But what did the Xbox One generation do? It wasn't like a jump like SNES to PlayStation 1 kind of level of jump. It wasn't like going from the PlayStation 1 to the Xbox original. It wasn't that drastic of a jump. But it was a big quality of life improvement. It's like if you sell your Toyota Camry and you buy a BMW 3 Series, it's still a car. You're trading 4 wheels for 4 wheels. You're trading a commuting vehicle for another commuting vehicle. But the thing is, this BMW has got really nice seats, a really nice interior. It's got a really good suspension. It's really sporty. It's zippier. It's faster. It's got a beefier engine. It's nice. And that's kind of where we are with gaming. We're like, the jump from Xbox 360 to Xbox One, the jump from Xbox One to Xbox Series X, it wasn't as sexy. Like, I played Titanfall 1, I was like, this is the best looking game I've ever played, but I don't feel like I'm playing something that is leaps and bounds so much more impressive than anything I ever experienced on my Xbox 360. And when I played my Xbox 360 for the first time, I thought to myself, this is so much crazier and cooler and more next generation than anything I ever played on the original Xbox. And so now we're in this like incremental, high fidelity, more luxurious quality of life kind of position where every time we get more hardware, it's just like, it's more power to play with and more rope to hang yourself with. And I think that's the problem. It's like we don't know in layman's terms why it's so difficult, as people that aren't developers. But the developers know why a game like Fallout 3 on the Xbox 360 is just rudimentary enough and just advanced enough that you can build it in 4 years. It can come out relatively bug-free, which is kind of a joke. It's a Bethesda game, but you know what I mean. And it's a game that just kind of works and is what it is, and you can charge $60 for it, and people will be satisfied with it. Whereas on the flip side, a game like Fallout 76 on the Xbox One 10 years later is like fucking broken. They can't get anything right. The game looks like shit, runs like shit. Nothing works. Features are missing because there just wasn't enough time and enough money to get the thing together in a finalized product the way they needed it to be, because that's just kind of where we are. The difference from this post Xbox 360 world is we're not chasing an evolution in gaming. We're chasing luxury. We're chasing a little bit better fidelity, a higher end, more luxurious experience, more cinematic feel, bigger worlds. We already have open worlds, but what if they were even bigger? We already have NPCs, but what if we could fit 8,000 of them on the screen at once? And that's the problem, is trying to get this quality of life, this prettiest version, this bigger, even bigger version, this higher end version is just, it's this game of diminishing returns, because in exchange for all that, Far Cry 6 is so much prettier than Far Cry 3 on the Xbox 360, but Far Cry 6, maybe that's a bad example because Far Cry actually has a pretty solid development timeline, but takes so much longer, takes twice the number of people to make it, costs twice the amount to make it as a game like Far Cry 3. It's like, why is that? I just think we've reached that tipping point. And that's why I'm always saying, and I even said it like 30 minutes ago on this very episode, scale it back, dude. Just focus a little less on the fucking graphics. I don't give a shit about your graphics. Like, don't care. Like that new, what was that game? Oh, that Marvel 1943. Like, that in-engine trailer looks so stunning. Those graphics could look significantly shittier, and I'd still be pretty optimistic about that game. I don't care. Just make the game look worse. Care less about how fucking cinematic and smooth it looks. Care less about how open world it is, how big the map is. Like, just scale that shit down a little bit and just focus on making a game in like 3 to 4 years that doesn't suck ass. And that, I just think that's really the crux of it all. Maybe that's oversimplifying it, but that is my understanding as a complete layman, as someone who doesn't really know what the fuck they're talking about. But from an outsider looking at it, it's like, it just seems like around the time roughly of like The Witcher 3, Fallout 4, 2015, kind of once the Xbox One, PS4 generation really starts kicking off. That's around the time, Destiny 2014, something like that. That's around the time where it's like we start to notice like something is off now. Everything's just like a little more ridiculous when it comes to game development. And it's just been kind of a downward spiral ever since. So I don't know, man. I don't know what the answer is, but I think developers got excited about the possibility of new hardware and more power and what they could do, and trying to, and it's like, I understand like if you're a longtime game developer, it's like you now have the power with modern consoles to make exactly the game you always envisioned making. That's awesome. You have the tools and the accessibility, but I wonder if, I don't know, the Jurassic Park thing that people always say, right? So concerned with whether or not we could do it, never stop to think about whether or not we should, or whatever the fuck it is that the guy from The Fly says. But, I said but with 2 T's, not but with one T. I don't know. Sam Frito gets the final comment this week and says, yep, I agree with you. My Final Fantasy would not be a 14-year-old girl. Okay, whoa, context. Okay, this is a joke I made last week about Final Fantasy, the name of the game being Final Fantasy, and saying that no one's Final Fantasy should be anime titties and fucking chocobo racing and all that. So just for context, so we weren't having an inappropriate conversation about underage girls by any means, please. Sam Frito says, yep, I agree with you. My Final Fantasy would not be a 14-year-old girl game or Bruno Mars t-shirt. Let's say Bob Iger does all those things you mentioned, fixes Walt Disney World back to original specs, meaning Skyride at Magic Kingdom. Epcot has innovations and It said probably auto-corrected to innovations, but I'm sure you meant interventions. And Disney creates an in-house gaming division with respect for devs and acquires Avalanche, exceptional company with vision. Whoa, let me just, side note. Just to be clear, getting Walt Disney World back into running up into spec would not be getting it back into 1971 condition, or 1971 condition. We're not trying to get the fucking gondolas back in Magic Kingdom. Okay, we're trying to get to I'm trying to get to post 9/11 Disney. That's my favorite Disney, or maybe just a little bit after that, where the majority of Disney World is fleshed out and established, but they haven't yet started. They haven't yet started molesting it with all the later Disney shit. We don't have 75 Star Wars attractions in the park, something like that, Anyway, what were we saying? You said, you've got, but as you said, that's your Final Fantasy. You've got a weird form of cancer that forces you to make embarrassing calls to Delilah for the rest of your life. Do you make it to a second month and you have to mention in calls how great Bob, you just keep it up. You keep it just for Bob, anonymity, and this is another word I can never pronounce. I know it. I can hear it. I can say it in my head, but I can't say it out loud. And whatever. To be anonymous. And I butchered this comment so bad. I'm sorry. We just have to stop reading. Xbox on, brother. That's what you said. All right. Sam Frito, as always, thank you for being incoherent while also being coherent. Thank you for being schizophrenic while also being completely cogent and making a beautiful, thought-provoking point. And most of all, thank you for mentioning Avalanche and the exceptional company that they are with their visions, and the fact that Disney really fucked up by not keeping them in-house and doing game development their own way. But anyway, I digress. I have nothing to say here. I don't know what we're talking about. I still don't really understand the other thing. I don't know who this Delilah is, but if I have to make calls to Delilah for the rest of my life, and I just have to mention how great Bob is, I can do that. I can get by with that. Bob's fine, but I want Bob to be in I want Bob to be like the British monarch, right? I want him to be basically just a fucking figurehead. This royalty nationwide welfare thing we got going on, right? Where the people are just paying taxes so these people can live a lavish, exceptional celebrity style life while they don't actually do a single goddamn thing to better the quality of life of the people. That's what I would do with Bob. He can stay there. He can be a figurehead. He can shake babies and shake hands and all that stuff. That's great, but I need someone else pulling the strings, okay? As Disney CEO, the first thing I'm doing is I'm partnering with Xbox, right? Okay? We partner with Xbox, and our first, we can expand over the weeks to come with additional things, but the first thing I would do as the CEO of the Walt Disney Company, with my newfound partnership with Microsoft and Xbox, and there would be a press release photo of me and Phil Spencer shaking hands. I want to get an Xbox console installed in every Disney hotel room across the world. I'm talking about Disney World hotels, Disneyland hotels, Paris, Hong Kong, Shanghai, the works. I want an Xbox installed in every hotel room at every Disney, including cruise ships. I want Xboxes plugged in to every stateroom aboard every Disney cruise ship, so that gamers with the ability to just sign into your Game Pass account, so that when you're on your Disney vacation, you can easily, in your off time and during your relaxation time, pick up some Xbox gaming moments and play Disney Dreamlight Valley and Halo Infinite and whatever it is you got to work on. So that's my first order of business. Second order of business is we are bringing back Disney Dollars, Disney Magical Express, and we are getting rid of Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind at Epcot. I don't care. We can pick it up and move it to the Hollywood Studios, but can't stay at Epcot. And yeah, that's it. Sam Frito, thank you for writing in. Thank you all for listening. If you're still here, I doubt you are. Appreciate you all being here. Welcome to Xbox On. Goodbye from Xbox On. And I'm going to play us out today with a song that I don't have licensing to use, but this podcast isn't monetized, so who gives a shit? But just out of respect for the artist, I've had this song stuck in my head all day. I've been listening to this shit all day. Listen, man, Sonic the Hedgehog, best music in the history of video games, And people always fucking oh, you like Sonic music? Escape the City, Sonic Adventure 2. Have you played Sonic Hero? Listen, those games are great. Those songs are great. I appreciate your enthusiasm for them. But please know there are a million other Sonic games with a million other great songs. And so I'm going to play us out with Dreams of an Absolution, which is from one of the Sonic Riders games. But oh, wait, no. Dreams of Absolution is one of Silver's songs from Sonic 06, but it is a remixed version crossed with Starry Night, and it's produced by, or this crossover, this remix is done by Tomoya Otani, which is the series composer, the Sonic series composer. This man's a fucking legend. I'm just going to play us out with this track today because even though I technically don't have license to play this, again, this podcast isn't monetized in any way. What are they going to do? Demonetize my video? I don't give a fucking shit. Enjoy this song. Enjoy your week. Guys, take care. Enjoy your Xbox hardware while you still have it. Enjoy the hardware God gave you while you still have it, if you know what I mean. And eat some good food. Spend time with loved ones. And until next week, go Avalanche. Empower your dreams.
And you'll see